Buongiorno, questa è la conferenza stampa del film in concorso Spencer e alla mia destra, in fondo al tavolo, dall'altra parte è Kristen Stewart. E regista del film PABLO LARRAÍN. Pablo, I'm going to start with a very simple question. Why Diana Spencer?
Simple? Okay. Hello. Well, it's a very. There are many answers for that because it's a process on time. But I wanted to make a movie that my mother could like. You know, I've made so many movies that she doesn't like at all, and I also wanted to make a movie that could somehow relate to what I think someone like my mother saw or see in Diana's figure. Diana, of course, was a very famous, beautiful icon on many levels. But she was a mother as well. And more importantly, was someone who created something incredibly beautiful, which is the level of empathy that she was able to create. I was always very curious to know why someone like her, that born to such a privileged circumstances, being linked to the royals, aristocracy, was someone so normal at the same time, and that could feel so ordinary and regular, and build these bridges of empathy all around the world. And I, again, insist on my mother because I saw her kind of having her, you know, her hair cut like her, and she would maybe try to dress like her. And then the more I looked into her, I realized that she carried an enormous amount of mystery. And that mystery combined with the magnetism that she had creates the perfect elements for a movie, you know, and you would never really completely understand. And then we found this miracle here named Kristen that can carry that mystery. And you would never really completely understand up until you get to see the movie. And right after you saw it, maybe you tell me you just saw it. Maybe... Yeah, maybe they would process. I think it's interesting when cinema does that. It allows you to have the audience to complete the process.
As a follow-up, and then I'm coming to you. Kristen, why do you think Diana Spencer had this power on people's imagination and hearts, actually?
I think it's just something she was born with. There are some people that are endowed with an undeniable, just, you know, penetrating energy. I think the really sad thing about her is that she, as normal and sort of casual and disarming her air is immediately, she also felt so isolated and so lonely. Like, she made everyone else feel accompanied and bolstered by this beautiful sort of light. And all she wanted was to just have it back. You know, it's like we're all mirrors of each other. What you give is what you get. And I think that she was sort of, you know, just desperate to reveal some truth in an environment that is steeped in the energy of, you know, as an outsider, I can say the Brits generally have the stiff upper lip mentality. That is like, it is the go-to generalization. And I think that for her, I look at pictures of her, anything, even just a fleeting little video clip, and I feel like the ground shakes and you don't know what's going to happen. And yeah, I think the idea of somebody being so desperate for connection and somebody who's able to make other people feel so good, feeling so bad on the inside, and being so generous with her energy. I just think that we haven't had very many of those people throughout history. I mean, she really sticks out as a sparkly, just, you know, house on fire. Yeah. There's a question there.
Buongiorno, sono Alessandra De Tommasi di Vogue Italy. My question is to Kristen Stewart. Since Mr. LARRAÍN just pointed out that, of course, Diana is an icon on so many levels, in the fashion world as well, I was wondering, what do you like about her style, and how do you think her style embody empowering women like us, but especially a woman like her that has so many fragilities? Thank you so much.
She is touchable. I think there's this really common thread in the fashion world, which is elevation. You know, it's unattainable. Let's give them a dream. It's like, I mean, that is one, whatever, that's one way of being or one aspiration, but I think that even when she looked her most beautiful and her most substantial, she also felt like she could kick her shoes off and like walk outside with you and ask you how you are and touch your face and be with you, and you would feel that honesty from her. It's hard to do that when you're teetering around on heels and kind of looking like, you know, nobody can come near you. We do see that as beautiful, but she was really able to just be there. She was so present. Wherever she was right there. Yeah, I think that's my favorite thing. That's my favorite thing about her. Well, I mean, you know, in regards to what she wore. Yeah, it didn't really matter what she was wearing, even though she had like incredible style sense. I think that she was somebody who knew how to like use clothes as armor, but at the same time was so constantly available and visible. It's like she couldn't hide. She wore her heart on her sleeve, and that to me was the coolest thing that she did.
Hey, Kristen. Scott Orland with Cinema Magazine, and she also knew how to use wire cutters. Who knew? I want to ask you, they can teach you how to cook, they can teach you how to drive, but nobody can teach you how to be famous. And as we see, there's that heartbreaking moment where she talks about being under the microscope and almost like having the wings pulled apart. How much did that resonate? I mean, because obviously no one taught you to be famous and it just happened. Did you understand, or did you have a better empathy around what she was going through in some capacity?
I suppose so, yeah. I mean, this is a tough one because I would never want to say, she was the most famous woman in the world. She's the most photographed woman in the entire world, right? Like, that's something that's said about her. And I have tasted a high level of that, but really kind of nowhere near that monumental, symbolic representation of an entire, you know, group of people, like an entire country, and then the world. So my experience with just sort of feeling sometimes like you don't have control over a situation, or when I say situation, like an impression of you. That's life, that's normal, everyone experiences that. You can't control everyone's opinions of you. But I think when you know that the story on the street is just wrong and there's no way to correct it, like, I mean, you know, this is disparate, I'm gonna get back on track, but like the idea that maybe you had 5 minutes where somebody thought that you hadn't connected with them and they've gotten this bad impression. I've wanted to run back 1,000,000 times every day and be like, oh, hey, can we actually redo that interview? I just thought about something else for a second. I didn't say the right thing. Imagine what that was like for her. Imagine feeling backed into a corner to that extent. At some point, you're going to bare your teeth because you're an animal and it's natural and it's normal. And I feel like everyone feels like they know her, like, because that is her talent, and it's what's beautiful about her is that she's accessible, and you know, you feel like you're friends with her, you feel like she's your mother. But ironically, she was the most unknowable person, and somebody who really never wanted to be alone. Some people are good at it, some people hate it. She wanted connection, she wanted people in her life, and she was the most isolated human, at least over these 3 days. It really, the imagining of these 3 days, it really sort of, we wanted that to come to a head. So yeah, of course, like I can relate, but it's tough to, I don't think anyone can understand what that felt like. We tried. I mean, we all dreamed and imagined, but I think the ironic part of, and the sort of the saddest part of the story is that we will never know her, and that's all she wanted, was to just sort of tell the story herself.
Pablo, as a follow-up, why did you give yourself 3 days to capture her?
Well, I think it's interesting what could happen when you look at someone in a crisis, right? Instead of just going over a longer period of time of her life, if you choose a very specific moment where there's a huge crisis, then things can become very interesting, and you can get to know that person really well. Because I think the character starts broken in a big crisis, then becomes a ghost, and then she's back again and healed and ready to move on. And in that sense, we felt with Steve Knight, who wrote this beautiful script, and along with my fellow producers here, that it was a great opportunity to create a fairy tale that had a different structure. We all know and tell fairy tales to our children, right, and fables, so for them to go to bed and to have a better understanding of life and an optimistic perspective. But then we grow up and we get to understand that fairy tale is really difficult. And in this case, we have a princess that is just going away from the idea of being a queen, because what she wants is to be herself. And that identity, it's beautiful to see in a compressed amount of time. And that also allowed us to use one single space. This palace, this castle, this house. They call it houses in England. But use that physical space that could sort of be used as a metaphor of a bigger structure. That house, that palace, it's really an organization. So you have a character that is trapped on the wheels of tradition and history.
Up there.
Good morning, Davide Sette, News Cinema. I've got a question for Kristen Stewart. This movie looks like a huge free jazz choreography, and even if you remove the Johnny Greenwood soundtrack from it, there's still this syncopated dance between you and the camera and DOP, which gives the movie a very special rhythm. So I want to ask you if you have ever thought about this performance in musical terms, maybe digging into some of the Princess testers, and if you ever thought about your performance in musical terms, and if you listen to any kind of music on set before shooting to get you into a particular mood for this role. Thank you.
Yeah, this movie, this experience. You know, the 3 days before she decided to leave the royal family, we imagined was probably not very much fun. But I took more pleasure into my physicality making this movie than I have on anything. I felt more free and alive and able to move and taller even. Everything about it, I just felt so like, yeah, and now put a leash on all of that. But the best days on set for me, which actually ended up being almost every day, we would shoot a little part of this montage that's in the movie, and it was very freeform. And you know, the only plan we ever had was you pick the look, and he picks everything. But like, it's the look and the room and the song sort of informed the energy, and it was just about inhabiting the space and kind of taking your whole impression of her, of everything you've learned inside and outside of the script, and just shoving it into one moment and just allowing it to become physical. And if that's not jazz, I don't know what is. It was if I hit a mark, I would have missed it. If I were to try and do my perfect Princess Diana impression, you would start to lose the life that was so overwhelming in her personality. So also whenever Pablo would choose a song, and also I was shaking before every single time I ever had to do this. I was like, oh God, like what's it gonna be? I'm gonna over the stairs, I'm gonna fall down, like what's the song? Is it happy or is it sad? And he's just like, just inhabit this space. But he chose songs that were eerily perfect for me. Songs that I was like, I almost put that on a playlist for you. Really girly. He's like an angsty teenager. There was what's the best one? The cover of.
So just to explain it, what we do is that you play almost every day. We had a space in our schedule for her to dance in a different space. So it was a specific, it's like wardrobe. And then I would choose a song, and I would hide that song from her, and I would roll the camera and then play the song and then see what happens. And then when we put it together, of course, it's Johnny's music, which is beautiful. It's called Crucifix, actually, the piece. But then she's not really dancing when we film it with that music. It was just different type of songs to get her, moving and excited and different emotions. Some of them were sadder, some of them were more fun and more aggressive, and sometimes with just classical music as well. So it would just drift into different styles. Just to
Miles Davis, the Talking Heads,
Yeah, well, do have some Lou Reed as well.
Yeah. This was the best one. It's like it's a Nirvana cover by.
Yeah, it's this choir.
No.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm being such an idiot right now because it doesn't really matter.
It's,
but
Sinead O'Connor.
Yeah. And
All apologize.
Yeah, all apologies. Song. And I had like just discovered that song, and it kind of blew my mind, and I had never heard it. And it's just such a different interpretation of that song, energetically. And then he put it on, and I literally almost screamed.
All alone is all we are.
Yeah.
There you go.
Except here.
Sì, buongiorno. Andrea Giordano per Icon, in italiano, se possibile, in Italian. Una domanda per Kristen Stewart. Il sistema di Casa Reale, con le sue regole e le sue contraddizioni, non mi sembra tanto lontano anche dal sistema di Hollywood. Volevo sapere, visto che lei è una veterana di Hollywood e del cinema, quanto è stato complicato, difficile per lei in tanti anni difendere la sua indipendenza e la sua visione sulle cose, visto che lei è anche una regista e quindi negli ultimi anni ha sperimentato tante cose. Quindi volevo capire quanto è stato lungo il processo anche per difendere la sua personalità. Grazie molto.
Yeah, I guess. I think you find that kind of in every aspect of life, even just being a modern woman in a Western society. There are things that you feel like you have to do, and then you grow up and you realize that you don't have to do all those things, and you get to pick and choose, and you have role models and all of that. I don't feel an extreme imposed rigidity. That was something I really did have to think about as an outsider. I mean, to the extent that she felt, absolutely. Because I'm allowed to make mistakes. I think that there's just such a huge, vast difference between, the job of an actor or an aspiring director and somebody in the royal family who is, keeping together an ideal that is supposed to keep an entire nation together. I don't consider my job as lofty. And if I did, I would be puking backstage. I think I have more fun watching art that is immediate and accidental and honest. And so I'm sure that I'll blunder left and right, and here we go. That's fine. I'm not as afraid of that, maybe as I was when I was younger, but I think that that's an age thing, and you grow out of it. And right here.
Hi, good afternoon. Baz Bamiboy from the Daily Mail. Kristen Stewart, I wanted to ask you, and congratulations, by the way.
Oh, hi.
You know, your performance is underpinned by the sort of the rules of British aristocracy and etiquette. What were the rules that you had to learn to, you know, to key into your performance? And have any of them stayed with you?
My curtsy just went out the window as soon as I walked off set. No, we had royal advisors. We had people to sort of tell us all the things that you couldn't know as an outsider. At this stage in the film, this woman is, the stage that we depict in the film is a true unraveling. So once I learned the curtsy, and I learned that we're supposed to, I don't know, not go in the kitchen ourselves and steal food. Like, all of those details, they're just, I don't really remember them. But there was always someone around to make sure that if anything was out of line, that we were remaining authentic, and we weren't undermining what we were trying to do. Because obviously I'm American and not from that country, and he's, from Chile, and yeah. But specifically, I would say the only thing I can really remember is the curtsy. That's a boring answer. I wish I had more for you. Not very low at all, or else you'll fall over. Yeah.
Il microfono qua, grazie.
Hi. It's a wonderful film, but it necessarily involves our voyeuristic obsession with the private life of a famous celebrity. Mm-hmm. Did that feel strange for you, to feel kind of on the other side of that? Did you have misgivings about kind of getting involved with that type of thing? As someone who's experienced, obviously intrusion in your own private life.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between intruding and the sort of multiplicity that art brings to the world. We were inspired, I say I came into this in a later stage, but, the movie doesn't offer any new information. It doesn't profess to know anything. It imagines a feeling, and I think my impression can only be my own. But that Diana was a woman who wanted people to come together, and I think that this movie's ambition is to bridge gaps. And yeah, I think if anyone ever made a movie about me, I'd be like. I wouldn't feel like it was, I wouldn't feel stolen from or taken from. There's nothing salacious about our intention. I think that would be probably more embedded in interpretation.
Hi, Kristen. Lovely to see you again. 2 years ago, I saw you in Seaburg and thought you'd captured the inner life brilliantly. I felt that you surpassed yourself in this movie. Both of them deal with others' control of the central character and your fight for control yourself. How much do you identify with that, and how important is control to you?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, choice and agency, and sometimes, it's weird. Like, there are certain oppressive forces that sometimes feel so debilitating that they feel physical. That you feel like you can't make a choice, that you've been forced into this situation, whatever. And barring circumstances that actually do provide like horrific actual oppression. When I'm talking like things that ideas that hold you back, that if you just change your perspective or look at it from a different angle or pretend that it's not there, you could get up and start running. it's really it is something that I think is a really important lesson to learn as you grow older, is that don't let things happen to you. You know, everything's not just coming at you. You know, you are choosing every day which direction to walk in. You know, every step you take, you're like, how big, how little, right, left. Like, I know that sounds, you know, kind of vaguely silly, vague and silly, but sometimes it really just is like a dawning moment in which you go, wait a second, no. And yeah, that's something that happens all the time. Like, but yeah, one of my friends was going through kind of a like terrible breakup recently, and it's really, you know, this is specific, but I did make this movie and look at her and go, dude, you can just choose what you want to do. This is not like, you're not on some predestined path. And sometimes your life can sort of like feel like it's happening to you, but really you can just take the reins. Yeah. It's hard to make choices like that though. And so it's scary, and so it takes balls. Yeah.
We have time only for one, I'm told, and I think he's been waiting for.
Hi, it's Robbie Collin from the Daily Telegraph here. Congratulations both on the film, loved it. I want to ask you both about the Anne Boleyn scenes, which I thought were just extraordinary. What did you both make of that historical parallel? What light did you think it shed on Diana's plight?
Well, I appreciate the question, but it's really in the heart of the movie. I wouldn't want to be the one that is here explaining it. That's exactly why we shot it. But what I will say is that it is a reflection on how history repeats itself. And even though that happened 500 years ago, there might be a way to look at it in a very similar way. So, it also speaks about something. It's not only about that, it's also about Major Gregory, Tim Spall's character, because we know what he did, related, please don't put this, but we know that if you saw the movie, of course you would understand. And he's the one that represents the House of Windsor, right? And he explains the magnitude and the relevance of that oath. So I think it's a friction in between the new and the old reality, and a friction that is fascinating for those who aren't British, I guess, which is to see how they remain in the same circumstances.
And I have just a quick one before we close, because we're running out of time. Pablo, could you address, you mentioned before the fairy tale, can you address the Gothic element of the film? Because it's very interesting that at turns it feels like a little bit like a horror film, and then it goes towards light at the end.
Yeah, well, I guess what I tried to express before, but I think that what captures, I guess, the desire and the imagination of billions of people around the world, around Diana, is the possibility of the fairy tale that can actually work out. You know, so there's a woman that is sort of chosen by the prince, and then she would eventually become the queen, and they will live forever, and that just doesn't happen. And I guess growing up, becoming older, becoming an adult, is the realization that life isn't like that. And I guess that is what makes people be so interested, because when we all saw her on that wedding dress, we all want her to succeed. And we all had the idea and the illusion that that would eventually be real, and that it was possible that this fairy tale could actually end well. And it just didn't happen.
Thank you very much, and I'm sorry we have to finish it here.
Thank you.